And walking the same distance as running burns about the same amount of calories without the risk of injury. It takes twice as long though. Wait, what? Oh boy, I can already hear you now.
What did Jim just say? That walking and running burn the same calories? Is he out of his mind?
Welcome to my podcast, where I'm sharing what worked for me in gambling, personal finance, and running a web publishing business over the last 20 years as I'm documenting a healthier and wealthier life in Greece. Because I respect your time for listening to the show and you appreciate honesty, I'll be reading from a teleprompter. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. Once again, the Christmas holiday season and New Year's Eve gatherings reminded me of something important, that no one is going to change their mind. I remember this every time I sit with family and friends at a dinner table, hearing things that don't make sense. I avoid arguing, tend to agree with everything said, and pick safe topics like the weather. Better yet, I stay quiet. Also, the older we get, the more stubborn we become. Try to change the opinion of someone older than you. That's impossible. The opinion of someone younger? Actually, you might stand a chance there. A piece of advice I've followed in life as I've grown older is not to try to change someone else's opinion. If I disagree, I follow this simple rule. Smile, nod, agree. Yes, pretend to agree even though I disagree. What's the point of arguing and getting into a debate that won't change anyone's mind? Who's ready to question their own opinion, let alone change it, because of a 10-minute discussion? Exactly. Few, if any. I see this even in myself, especially if my opinion has come from personal experience. Who are you to come and change it? Have you lived what I've lived? Similarly, I don't expect to change anyone's opinion. And I respect that, especially if it's the result of years of experience. That's why it's easier to change the opinion of younger ones. The younger person will think, wait, Jim is 10 years older. Why is he saying that? He must know something. I better listen. In the end, he might not change my mind, but let me listen to him. I might learn something. Now compare all that with talking to your father. You'd better have achieved something spectacular to even have a chance to be heard. And even then, the odds are against you, for the same reason that your own child won't listen to you when the time comes. By the way, I aim to avoid making this mistake as I'm raising my daughter. I remember when she was much younger that I used to tell her that soon you learn things that I don't remember or never learned myself. That's when I'll have the chance to learn from you. Can you imagine how strange that must have seemed to her, given how much respect kids have for their parents at a very young age? Indeed, she didn't take long to prove me right. Another thing I'm trying to teach her from a very young age is managing her money. In other words, personal finance, which I was never taught, neither at school nor by my family. The new generation is very fortunate. Or should I say, luckier than mine? Isn't that what they say? That the next generation is always better than the last? They are fortunate because the information is very accessible. In my time, if you wanted to learn something, you'd find the encyclopedia volume that had the word and read 4 to 5 lines about the topic. And that was it. Now, with the bombardment of information kids receive these days, it's much easier to learn a whole bunch of things. Yes, this bombardment also includes information that might not be good for kids. But I can't deny the positives of today's era. Yes, I'm one of those parents who only see good in modern technology, but I acknowledge the negatives too. So, my little one will hear of personal finance much earlier than I did. I'm just laying the groundwork here, setting the foundation until she's old enough, and hopefully, algorithms will feed her videos about managing her finances. And one of the most important aspects of personal finance is tracking her income, wherever it comes from. For example, New Year's Eve was a lucky day for me. I found €1.10 on my morning walk, yay! Of course, I recorded it in my budgeting app, where I track my financial ins and outs. My friends mock me for tracking small amounts with such accuracy.
Come on, Jim. Will you write down even €1 and a few cents?
Yes, why not? Isn't that money? Only someone who has been budgeting even for just a month will appreciate how important this tracking is when, at the end of the month, they realize how many missed euros have accumulated. And if it's income, that won't make a big difference. But if it's expenses that were overlooked, in the end, those 40 or 50 euros that went missing will hurt our wallet. But it was the New Year's Eve. According to local tradition, Christmas carol singers would visit us that day. As soon as I entered €1.10 as income in my budgeting app, I had to give it to the kids coming to sing to us. And it was certainly much more than €1.10. In fact, the other day we discussed with other parents how much money they give to carol singers. Another dad usually gives €5 to each group that rings his doorbell for singing, while a mom finds it excessive as she gives half to €1 for each visit. As for me, I give half a euro for each person in the group. So for a group of 4 children, I'll give €2. The only exception I make is if a child comes alone, especially if they're in primary school and not some teenagers. For the little kid who had the courage to knock on the door alone, I'll give €1 or even more sometimes. As an introvert who would never do that in their place, I want to commend the courage they showed. How much do you usually give to carol singers? Or are you like me, who would never open the door if I hadn't become a parent? Tell me in the comments. Now, since you are on the topic of money here, I shared a story these days about the most popular card game Greek people play on New Year's Eve. 21. I wasn't sure how well known the game is internationally, so I had to roughly explain the rules. Anyway, I gave it a shot. For those of you who want to read it, there's a link in the description of the YouTube video and in the podcast's show notes, depending on the platform you are listening to right now. The gist of it was that we could come up with a simple strategy even for this game, if we wanted to improve our chances of beating our friends on New Year's Eve. Just for having a laugh, of course, we don't want to ruin friendships because of money. It's a bit late sharing that now, of course, but perhaps you'll remember me next year when you sit down to play cards with your friends and family as the year turns. Staying in the finance world, let me transition to a more timeless subject.
Cryptocurrencies.
21 card game is nice, but for 364 days, you won't hear about it again. Crypto, however, is more likely to be in the news much more often this year, which is predicted to be hot. The hype is real, but I'm not here to become just another fanboy of cryptocurrencies that only makes an appearance in good years. After all, good years are not for buying. If you ask the experts, they'll tell you that the best time to invest is when everyone is scared, or when everything's quiet. That was the time when Bitcoin lost 70% from the 65k it had reached and stayed at 25k for many months. Were you reading articles about cryptocurrencies then? No, there was nothing in the news. After the surge to 65k, when major websites had daily news about cryptocurrencies, suddenly they seemed to have disappeared. No one was talking about cryptocurrencies for months. You hardly ever heard of any story or price updates. Total silence. Crickets. However, that was the accumulation period. That period ended. Now those who were accumulating Bitcoin in 2023 are sitting and watching the climb, much like they did in 2017 and 2020. And guess who's causing it? Exactly. Those new to crypto world people who read articles about
the skyrocketing of Bitcoin, the tremendous surge in prices, and the latest altcoin gaining 5,000% in a day.
Meanwhile, most people don't even know what cryptocurrency means, and they don't need to, if you ask me. An online friend on X confessed just that. He has no idea how cryptocurrencies work, no matter how many guides he reads. He has genuinely zero interest in learning anything about it either. He says he only wanted to make easy money, which never works that way, by the way. Well, it's actually easy. You just buy it and forget about it. But how many of us can do only that? Exactly, few. And that's why it's difficult. Because it's difficult to sit on our hands, as the saying goes, and do nothing. And yet one of the hardest things in investments is to do nothing when you should do nothing. A simple rule to follow is this: invest at least 1% of net worth in cryptocurrencies. Consider that most people have tied more than 50% of their net worth down in real estate. Others have the rest in stocks or bonds. That's because investing in homes, bonds, and treasuries is considered safe and a little less safe in stocks. On the other hand, anything can happen in crypto, and that's why they should risk as little as possible. And the crypto market isn't the only asset that promises a big reward, hence the big risk. There are many more similar assets to risk money on. Crypto is just more popular nowadays. Anyhow, I consider cryptocurrencies my second best investment as a business owner, after reinvesting profits back into my business. What other investment can offer the same kind of odds for making 3 to 5x in 7 years, just by setting and forgetting? See? Easy, yes. Quick? No. And at this point, I must declare that this is not investment advice, but simply me sharing with you for entertainment purposes what I've learned or sometimes do. I might be right, I might be wrong. No one is infallible. Quick break. I'm glad you are enjoying the show. A summary of this episode is sent as a newsletter to my blog's readers. Consider subscribing at makos.com if you want to save time and get the podcast's main points in your inbox before I publish the episode. Now, back to the show. Recently, I heard people running multi-million-dollar businesses say the following on a podcast. Assume everyone makes mistakes. Lawyers, accountants, doctors, everyone. Well, that was such a relief for me when I heard it from a multimillionaire entrepreneur, as I've experienced this for quite some years and thought I was the only one. Side note, whenever you think something has only happened to you, erase that thought from your mind. So why was I relieved? Because if such a successful entrepreneur holds this view, then it's not an exception, but actually the rule to encounter mistakes from people who would be the last I expected to make mistakes. Let me explain. It's the winter of 2013. Delaware's Secretary of State has signed my company's certificate of formation. I am now incorporated. I have just founded my company in the United States. As expected, every company needs lawyers and accountants, which I hired to set up my company. I didn't set up the company through a website promising the exact same thing at a quarter of the price. I believed I had done everything by the book. But over the following years, I noticed a few hiccups outside of my control in running this business. I discovered some small errors from both the legal and accounting teams. I thought, is it possible for them to be wrong? The lawyer makes mistakes. The accountant makes mistakes. Mistakes that I found out. How can that be? I thought people were flawless in their jobs, especially legal and accounting teams. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong? Well, most of the time, it turned out I was right, and I ended up correcting legal and accounting mistakes. And of course, this communication back and forth took place via email. And lawyers and accountants on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean get paid by the hour to respond. In effect, I was paying them to fix their mistakes that I was pointing out. So at some point, I feared that I hadn't done a good job picking the legal and the accounting firms. On the other hand, I thought, with so many years of experience and mainly with so many entrepreneurs trusting them, is it possible for me, at just 33, to correct people who are years ahead of me? So, listening to that successful entrepreneur on the podcast resolved any doubts I had. Assume everyone makes mistakes. If that's the case in the business game's higher levels, I felt relief. But I won't make the mistake again of assuming that I'm the only one who makes mistakes. Speaking of mistakes, here's a mistake I made these days. Because, of course, nobody's perfect. 1 week. That's how long it took for Google to validate a simple fix to a simple but critical error. A duplicate line of code to one of my websites. An advertising company I work with had sent a new ad code for me to insert in one of my websites. The goal was to replace an advertisement that was already running, possibly for better performance. The change didn't take me more than 5 minutes, as it usually happens in these cases. The very next day, however, I received an email you never want to receive. Google informed me that my pages had a significant error in their code. The error was so serious, one of those classified as critical by the search engine, that Google would no longer serve these pages. In other words, the pages would be removed from Google's results. A disaster, as you can imagine. When 90% of traffic comes from Google, you immediately understand the magnitude of income that translates to. The impact on the website's profitability would have been tremendous as long as this continued. So, my first concern was to find the mistake, and once corrected, let Google know it's fixed. The mistake was fixed quickly, I must say. It had to do with a line of code that already existed on my website and shouldn't have been repeated. The advertiser hadn't paid attention since they sent similar codes to all of their partners, and I wasn't aware that this specific line shouldn't have been duplicated. It took about a week for Google to confirm that the mistake had been corrected. Although most pages took their place on the search engine results the next day, some took a week to appear. These errors do cost actual money. But enough with mistakes and errors. I must have done something correctly. Well, for sure, it wasn't a mistake to buy an iPhone, having used Android devices for more than a decade. I've been an iPhone user for 2 years now. This status symbol product that's never included in discounts and exempted from store promotions, while all other products are offered at half the price. That's why it's a status symbol, as Apple doesn't want their products to be confused with blebs. A similar situation applies to Ugg boots, as I read in the company's founder's book. There's a reason why the prices of specific products never drop, or why you won't find them in a discount store. These particular boots, for example, were found in a discount store in the United States only once, and that happened by mistake, which the founder later rectified by implementing rules to prevent it from ever happening again. So, the iPhone. How's the experience been? Great, I must say. It surpassed my expectations compared to working on Android phones for far too long, apparently. Perhaps one of the best purchases I've ever made. A friend kept encouraging me to switch to the Apple world for years. As he accurately predicted, once I had an iPhone in my hand, I ended up owning an iPad and a MacBook 2 years later. The PC, over there, is reserved for gaming, just as the same friend predicted. I certainly didn't see that coming as a PC gamer ever since my Amstrad 1512. Another surprise for me was that, much like I once practiced card counting in blackjack, now I'm counting my food bites to track calories. From card counter to bite counter in 20 years. I believe by now everyone knows that I've lost quite a few kilos in recent months. Another known fact is that I'm practicing what I used to make fun of, weighing my food and tracking calories on a daily basis. But what happens when you eat out at a restaurant or at a friend's place? I've discussed this with friends who have been losing weight following the same method. They simply ignore it. They do not track their food when eating out. Come on, Jim, that's not the end of the world if you miss a dinner in the food app. For me, it reminds me of the example we talked about earlier of not writing down every euro in the budgeting app. And it also reminds me how much of a perfectionist I am. So I estimated that each forkful or spoonful that comfortably fits in my mouth without stuffing myself is about 15 to 20 grams. Thus, by counting my bites, I roughly know how much I've eaten. When I return home, I'll update my app with how much I've eaten, so that I can continue tracking the week's calories with the least possible error. So nowadays, as a healthy eating enthusiast, I count bites when I'm eating out and cannot weigh food. Similarly, a gulp for me is roughly 20 ml. Yes, I also write down how much water I drink. This might help you estimate how much wine you are drinking, because I don't. I don't drink alcohol at all. But if I were to drink, that's what I do. Maybe I'd allocate 10 ml for each sip of wine instead of 20, as you don't drink wine to satisfy your thirst, I hope. And so 20 sips would be 200 ml or roughly 200 calories, or half a chocolate bar, or a single honey-dipped cookie known as melomakarono in Greece. And all of this would go into the app where I track my calories. Yep, 2 apps determine my life nowadays. One manages my financial budgeting, the other manages my nutrition budgeting. I plan to talk about both in detail in the future, so if you're interested in losing weight or getting your finances in order, follow me on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Since I mentioned melomakarono, I remember the photo I took during the holiday season. A photo of melomakarono. It wasn't a special melomakarono, it was the typical melomakarono we eat during Christmas here in Greece. Only I said that what you see in the photo is not a melomakarono, but you are actually looking at 20 minutes of walking. That's how much it will take me to burn it. For just one. If I ate 3, I would have to walk for an hour. Whenever I heard such statements in the past, when I didn't pay attention to my diet and nutrition, I always made faces.
If you eat this, you have to walk that much. If you eat that, you need to run this much.
Well, this makes sense only if you have consumed the calories you were supposed to eat that day. Let me give you an example. I burn about 2,500 calories a day. 1,800 when I'm asleep, and another 500 with my daily activities. Just keep 2,500 in your head. Suppose I've eaten 1,500 calories in a day, and it's evening time, and I have a craving for something sweet. I can eat 8 melomacarona and I won't gain weight. There's no need for me for going for a 3-hour walk. My body will burn those calories anyway. In fact, my body has already burned those calories. If I don't eat those 8 melomacarona that day, I lose almost 200 grams of weight. And if I do the same thing for a week, I lose a kilogram, as 7,000 calories roughly equal a kilogram of fat. Let's say another day now, I've eaten 2,500 calories of food. Whatever I eat from that point forward stays in my body. So if I eat 1 melomacarno, it's true I need to go for a 20-minute walk if I want to maintain my weight. Or for a 10-minute run. Oh, running. What did I say now? Well, I hate running. I would run as a workout if I didn't have the time to walk the same distance and if I enjoyed it. Not only do I not like it, but it's also very straining to the knees. The force of 12 times our weight lands on our knee on each step, whereas with walking, it's 1.5 times. Especially when you run on concrete, asphalt and sidewalks. It's the worst. The soft surfaces absorb part of the strain. So I don't run to save my knees. Also, I happen to like walking. And walking the same distance as running burns about the same amount of calories without the risk of injury. It takes twice as long though. Wait, what? Oh boy, I can already hear you now.
What did Jim just say? That walking and running burn the same calories? Is he out of his mind?
Hear me out. Yes, for the same distance, the calories are about the same, but the walking time is twice as long. If you run for as much time as walking, it's true that you will burn double the calories, but simply because you would cover twice as much distance. But if you ran for the same distance as walking, you'd still burn about the same amount of calories as you would have run for half the distance. There are 3 variables here: time, distance, calories, and all are connected with each other. Let me give you a better example to make myself clear. I walk for an hour. If I'm not slacking off, I walk at a speed of 6 kilometers per hour. I burn 400 calories by walking 6 kilometers in an hour. Some other day, say I decide to go for a run. I run twice as fast, now burning 800 calories per hour. Sure, but I've run 12 kilometers instead of 6. That's twice the distance. If I ran the same distance, that's 6 kilometers, I would burn 400 calories, the same as walking for an hour. I'm burning at double the normal walking rate simply because I'm walking twice as fast. I can understand why this is so hard for many to grasp. So, this is where I am at when it comes to exercising. Anyone who has free time, like me, is better off walking and keeping their knees safe. Anyone in a hurry and with time constraints is better off running to burn the same calories and save time. Just like in everything in life, To earn something, you must risk something. I don't want to risk an injury to save time. I have plenty of time. So I don't want to risk an injury. If I want to eat more, I have to walk more to hit my weight goal, either losing weight or maintaining it. So in order to enjoy eating more food, I have to lose time by walking longer, thus losing time, or risk an injury by running. Well, I think this entire debate should make for an entire episode. Final quick break. Since you've made it this far, I'd appreciate if you press the like button and turned on the notification bell to know the minute I post a new episode. If you are listening on your favorite podcast platform, consider leaving a review. It helps a lot. Now, let's wrap it up. Finally, I want to mention two things I've noticed as I'm turning 45 this year. The first is that the more success I have, the less risk I want to take, and vice versa. When I was younger, I wanted to take risks. I didn't have much to lose. The older I become and the more achievements I have, no matter how insignificant they might be, the more they add up. These small accomplishments make me appreciate what I stand to lose if I take the same degree of risk. Hence, it begins to make sense that older people are more risk-averse, while they are the same people who took risks and tried a batch of things at a younger age. Nevertheless, at 45, I still want to take some risks, which is why you still see me here. And this is the second thing I want to say. I find sharing online challenging the older I get as I seek less attention. Doesn't it sound logical? How many senior citizens do you know that are being vocal? Now compare that with people in their 20s or 30s. Have you seen many elderly people trying to draw attention to themselves? Most feel lonely, enjoy solitude, and can't understand younger generations. I see it in myself too. Every time I wanted to share something online in recent years, the first thought that crossed my mind was, I won't enlighten them. Why can't they figure it out themselves? How did I learn things myself? Let them put in the effort to understand how the world works. The wiser I get, the quieter I become. Remember how this podcast started? That people don't easily change their minds. Well, why should I even try? Yet here I am, being more active than ever on the internet and social media. Why? What am I hiding from you? What's the truth? Am I lying all along? Well, it's a wonderful feeling to know that your writing, your photos or your creations have helped someone. I've experienced it. I've lived it. People have told me that, and I want to keep on doing that. That's why you see or hear me here. And I hope you continue. Like and subscribe. Ah, God! Did I really have to say that? For the algorithm?